Hi, I'm Sarah Veblen. I am back with my friend and student Nancy Tafoya for part two of our conversation about purposeful sewing and finding your style. And there is a part one. We talked a lot about life transitions that we go through, and all of a sudden you think, oh, I don't know how I want to get dressed, and how you go about developing a sense of style after that. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of how do you go about doing this. So welcome, Nancy. Thanks for joining me again.
Good morning, Sarah. I know it's afternoon for you, but still morning here.
That's fine. Different coast, bi-coastal here. In part one, we talked a lot about these different life transitions we go through. And it was interesting in the description of that one, I wrote that I had worked with you for a long time and had seen you go through several life transitions from high-powered executive and into retirement. And now you're going through another transition from married life into a single life. And I've really appreciated how open you are about things. But behind all of that, the focus is how do we develop our style of clothing so that we're comfortable in it and enjoy wearing our clothes, and we feel like they say something about us. So one of the things you and I talked about in part one is that we do create a first impression when we join a room, meet somebody, that there is that time, a short number of seconds, I believe it is. I don't know if you know the actual time, the studies that
3 to 6, something remarkably short.
yeah, that somebody's going to make a size you up and put you in some sort of pigeonhole. And I think part of what you and I are talking about is that we have some amount of control as to how we get pigeonholed, and
Right.
by choosing what we're gonna wear. And I'm curious if you would talk for a few minutes about what the last year has been like for you, year and few months plus, when you've been going through this transition of realizing that you were in fact going to be divorcing and now getting your feet on the ground. And um, what was it like waking up and getting dressed every morning?
I want to shorten that to the last 6 months because the first 6 months were not pleasant, and I basically wore gym clothes the entire time.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Um, it really depends on what I'm doing for the day. I mean, even now, a large part of my time is let's go walk the dog, and I'm just in casual clothes. But because I'm trying to reintroduce myself to the world, I do actually think about what I'm doing in terms of trying to convey the thought that I'm still alive and kicking, um, and somewhat playful and with serious moments of joy rather than just being down in a deep well. So I I spent a lot of time going to play golf and then joining people for social events at the club, either after golf or in the evening for dinner. And so a lot of it is trying to resurrect that feeling of joy about going out in the world and actually seeing people. So a lot more in terms of color, I guess even walking the dog. Um, and while I'm not a really trendy person, I want to feel like I'm at least reflecting a little bit of awareness of what today's trends and fashions are. Although even as I say that, I know I don't do it very much.
You're not wearing a lot of crop tops this summer.
I think I've reached my limit on crop tops, judging the way my body seems to be changing. Yeah, that's distant history
I see
now.
some younger girls and even more mature women wear that and they can pull it off. And to me, I think, oh, nobody wants to see my tummy. And I'm not showing
No,
it. And I think that speaks to what we're comfortable with and understanding that
yeah.
it's important to be comfortable regardless what the trends and styles are. So have
What
you
I
found
also
that
think
go ahead.
your body shape changes amazingly also. So that's a transition none of us can really have a lot of control over. I just finished making a skirt and holding it up. I'm like, okay, my waist is here and my hips are here. I'm a rectangle now, and I used to be an hourglass. So, I mean, that's something that metabolism is just done, nothing else.
Right. Yeah. A typical menopausal, perimenopausal, and postmenopausal women
Yeah,
experience that thickening of the middle that for some reason the body wants that soft tissue around the middle now.
yeah. So
And
camouflaging that is certainly something that I try to do now.
so, and that's interesting that you use the word camouflaging. So at least not accentuating it. Is that what you mean?
Right. Yes.
So
Yeah, I
it's
don't wear 3-inch wide belts anymore.
right, but you're not necessarily just wearing loose and flowy garments that
Yeah,
cover up,
yeah,
don't reveal any kind of figure
right.
underneath. And so,
But that goes a little bit to style because loose and flowy, yes. Not revealing anything about the figure underneath, probably no. Because you can go, this year is like the bohemian look with all the tiered ruffles and umpire waist with gathers and all of that kind of stuff. No, not doing that. So I'm not quite that loose and flowy. A streamlined silhouette without too much definition is one thing, but not terribly loose.
yeah. So a restrained bohemian look, maybe.
Yeah, very. So much corporate life in back of me.
Yeah. So when you are going off on a day that you're going to play golf and then you have supper with your golf buddies afterwards, you change clothes? You're not going to supper in your the what you're wearing on the links, or are you staying?
Typically, supper is a change of clothes. Lunch afterwards is still links dress, which is acceptable, but supper and going to the club for supper is generally something that's not quite cocktail, but definitely it's a step up above from slacks or shorts or a skirt.
Okay. And what sorts of clothes have you been wearing that you well, I have twofold question. So I'm guessing that you've kind of tested out what you like to wear in that situation. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you feel like didn't really work for you and now what is starting to work for you.
Well, I had the opportunity to have dresses made for me while I was still working, actually, and I was traveling. And so I had a collection of ITY knit dresses that were what they call gently skimming, very bold colors, um, that sort of thing. So I tried those for a while, but realized that they felt acceptable, but they didn't feel pretty. And so going back to our discussion last time, how do you want to feel?
Hmm.
Um, Definitely after being left by my husband, I did not want to feel like I was out on the dust heap in the backyard. So I want to feel pretty and attractive. So I've moved more towards um, gentler, a gentler use of color, not quite so in your face. Um, I do tend to be more 3/4 length sleeves because at 70 the arms just aren't what they used to be. So I have gone towards, I have stayed away, I should say, from the sleeveless look, even though I used to always love that. Um, and I tend to do a dress versus a skirt and jacket, although I can see the suit and particularly pantsuits seem to be coming back right now, but they feel a little too dated to me because I remember the last time they came around. So
Right.
they don't feel as fresh.
I was wondering because you were in the corporate world for so long and a skirt and jacket or a pantsuit was what you had to, what was
Right,
acceptable for you to be
right.
wearing. Um, so do you think that that enters into your feeling that that's not really what you want to be wearing?
It certainly does to me because I started my life when women weren't really doing a lot of that. And I was, at the time that I started, we still did the pinstripe suits with the little bow ties and white starched shirts. So the suit concept to me, even though it became acceptable when Hillary Clinton was running for president to have the pantsuit, it still feels very constrained to me. So doing a skirt and a top, not necessarily a really structured jacket, maybe something with a shawl collar or no lapels, something very streamlined that looks like you could shrug it off in a second. And it doesn't look like it's a piece of armor that you're putting on for the day at work. Is something much more likely that I'm going to be doing. And if you look at my closet now, most of my jackets are very streamlined, very few pockets. Fortunately, not the 80s shoulders anymore. So something that looks not sweaterish, but more comfortable than a jacket.
Okay. So you've used two words that I find interesting, and I'm going to pause where we're going with this conversation to point them out, because I think for perhaps you, I know for me in the past, and for other people listening to our conversation, I think putting words to these concepts are important. You and I touched on that in our previous conversation, but you talked about the pantsuit felt too constrained, and I really picked up on that word constrained. So my reaction is, okay, Nancy doesn't really want to feel that constrainment, whatever it means to her in that context. And then you also talked about how a lot in your corporate life that the pants suit or skirt and jacket suit was your armor.
Right.
And
Very much.
you're moving away from that. And
right.
To me, that means, okay, you don't need that sort of shield protection of the armor that you're walking into that boardroom and you've got to command attention and let everybody know that you're the one running the meeting. But that you're more accessible or more open, or what are some words you would
The
use?
word that I use is approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're sitting at the head of the board table at a meeting, generally you're not that approachable. You're you might be, but generally you're actually just saying, I'm here to do business and let's get on with it. So if you're sitting in the cocktail lounge at the club having a glass of Chardonnay with a couple of your friends, you don't want to be sending off vibes that say stay away.
Right.
No, you want to send off vibes that say it's a pleasant day and we're having a great time.
Okay. So approachable, but also there's the way you say that we're having a nice day, and encompassing. It's like a
Right.
welcoming in
Right.
of, come join us perhaps.
Right. Exactly that. Come join us in the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the type of thing that this is an example of why I think it's so, words can be so powerful in our search for our style is, and Nancy and I are having this conversation for the public, but you might find a watcher might find that they have a conversation with a friend and just ask the friend, okay, if you hear me use some different words, you please write them down or pick up on it. Don't interrupt the conversation so much. I interrupted yours and my conversation to pick up on the words constrained and armored. But it's those types of things that I think are giving us the clues that we can utilize to figure out what style we do want to be wearing.
And I also think that as an aside for that it actually is helpful to have somebody that you can have conversation with that talk about how you present yourself and how you want to present yourself. Anybody who's going through transition or anybody who's really thinking about the purpose behind their dressing has decided that they're trying to figure something out. So it's good to have somebody, a girlfriend, a sister, a confidant that can give you feedback. Going through the divorce, I met with a personal shopper, and her, because of course none of my wardrobe kind of fit who I wanted to be, her requirement was to sit down and write 5 words that defined what you wanted people to see out of you, which is actually surprisingly difficult.
And
It's surprisingly difficult to come up with 5 words, and then it's surprisingly difficult to only come up with 5 words.
right, I can get it. So what would you share your 5 words?
Well, I can't remember most of them. Sexy would be one, joyful, because I don't want to be a sad sack. And you and I talked about a little bit last time, to be elegant and casual at the same time. So
Yeah.
elegant and casual, casually elegant, one of those. I don't want to be frou-frou, so I want to have a very simple elegance about what I wear and how I put it together. But I don't want to lose a sense of fun. I think you can be so elegant that you look like your House and Garden or Vogue, which is look, don't touch, and don't mess it up. And I don't want to do that. But I do want, and I think that comes into that approachability thing. I want to look attractive. I want the clothes that I wear to make me look good rather than me carrying the clothes. And that was also an experiment because there's some fantastic fabrics out there, great lines, interesting things you can do with them. And I feel like I'm carrying around a billboard. So you have to figure out whether or not you're using clothes to make people focus on you, or if you're using clothes to make people focus on, and this is for people who sew, obviously, focus on your skill with fabric and what you can do with fabric. Those are 2 very acceptable things to do. I choose to try to work on having people focus on me, and therefore the clothes should bring something out in me. Very, very self-centered, but
Well, but that's what this is all about, is that
yeah,
I think I'm glad you said that, because people who shy away from having these conversations with a friend or making a lot of notes and thinking about it at the level at which you've thought about it, and you and I've talked about it, both in our previous conversation and in non-recorded conversations, they feel like, well, I'm just talking about me over and over and over again. But we have to think about ourselves and be focused on ourselves in order to figure out what we want
yeah,
our clothes to be, what we're comfortable in, what we want our clothes to say about us, and what allows what we feel our true personality to come forth.
right. And we're going to invest a lot of time and effort into creating those clothes. So you want them to do what you want them to do. So
Exactly, because we all know that the sewing process is not a fast one, especially if you're interested in having a good fit. There's the pattern making involved, the fitting involved, the learning about the fabrics. It's not a fast thing. So we,
not to leave out the unpicking involved.
yes. And so
Oops.
when we do focus in to make a garment, we want to have some a pretty good idea that it's going to work for us.
Right, right.
Uh,
And I think that comes back to the process here, which is being purposeful.
yeah. Would you talk a little bit about working with the personal shopper? Was that worthwhile to you?
Um, in one way, yes, because I think it takes you out of your rut. And I think that's the important thing to do. So she came up with some color combinations that I went, nope, not ever gonna do it. So I have like my little boundaries that I won't go out of, but I did push them a bit with her encouragement. A couple of things that I would never have thought would look interesting on because they didn't look that interesting on the hanger. And once you put them on, they were like, wow, that really works. So I mean, it's interesting because somebody else looks at you without all of the baggage that we carry around in our heads. They look at you and they can say, this is going to be an interesting look for you. Give it a go. So I brought home things that I thought, not sure about this, but I'm going to try. I mean, I would wear them to the club for dinner, and all of a sudden get people like, "Oh, that looks great. You look great. How have you been?" And so it was very, very good for that, and it was very good for her, making me sit down and really think about how I wanted to describe myself. I've actually been looking at my wardrobe and thinking I need to go back and talk to her again. And then I think, why am I doing that? I have a sewing machine. So, it's a tug.
Yeah. When I was doing custom work, very often when I got a new client, I would ask them to bring 4, 5, 6 garments that they like to wear, or there were some aspects of the garment that they really liked, and then to bring some things that they did not like to wear. And I would have them just do kind of a little fashion show for me and have them talk. And I was able to gather a lot of information. And very often in something that they didn't like to wear, we'd both be looking in a mirror, and I would go behind them and I would say, okay, but what if we did this to the neckline? And they go, oh, I like it then. So having somebody else, as you were just saying, bring you things to try on. It's just experiment. I view it as
Right.
fun. Some clients I would take to, we used to have a store here called Loman's that had the dressing room was just a big room with mirrors all the way around it, and you just get undressed right there. And you can take a ton of clothes back there. And it was great because I would bring in 6, 7 different garments and have the person try them on, and we'd talk about it. And some were absolute no's. It's like, get that thing out of here. But then there were
Right.
other times like your experience, like, I'd never even thought about that.
Right.
And then with my input and the training I have for visual proportion, I would say, well, what if we had that? Do you like the print in the fabric, or do you like the structure of the garment? And what if the neckline were different, something like that?
Right.
So I think that that's
Or accessories.
a concrete exercise that
Yeah.
people can do. You can do it by yourself, but it's sure a heck of a lot more fun to do with somebody else. And if you have a
You also
friend
get
who
you get more information if you do it with somebody else.
yes, you do, because
Yeah.
it's hard for us to go pick out things that we aren't drawn to. So we're going to pick out the things that we know we're drawn to. Whereas your friend might say, well, there are all of these things, and I know they aren't your color. And then sometimes it's like, okay, look at the style, don't look at the color, or look at the color, but don't look at the style. Is the color good for you? Um,
Right.
there have been a few times in my past life of doing custom clothing that I went with clients that I knew pretty well, and we would just end up laughing our tails off because of some of the things that we would um, have her try on. And a couple of clients said, okay, now I'm going to pick out some things for you to try on. And that was fun too, and valuable, because then that person, my client, was able to start to um, show me that she's understood some of the concepts of what we were doing, of what the
And
exercise.
then she can more accurately do it for herself because she's learning the analytics and learning to take herself out of the equation. So you start to use your eyes and your brain rather than your emotions.
Right, exactly. And nowadays, many places where you try clothes on, clothing stores, they don't mind if you take pictures. It used to be kind of a no-no, but now I think it's pretty acceptable. And something you can do is take pictures and then later look at them. And the
Right.
advantage of that, even if it's a picture of yourself, reflection in you're taking a picture of the reflection of yourself in the mirror, it gives a different depth of field. And if you then look at it either on your phone or on a computer screen, it enables me at any rate to see something slightly different than when I am
Mhm.
just looking at it in person at the reflection.
Yeah, because we're generally looking at ourselves in a mirror from about 3 feet, maybe 4 feet. And so you're not really getting the image of the entire person. You know, what I do at home occasionally is I will put my camera where it's like you're taking a selfie, but I'll put it on the dresser and then back up and take the picture from
Mhm.
a distance. I have a phone that I can just say capture and it'll do it. And then you can look at it and really get a sense of how the overall look is and if that's really what you want to do.
Right. And
Sometimes I've trashed an entire outfit because of that.
yeah, and it's really, it's a tool at your disposal that I think is another really helpful tool.
It also helps with posture. Makes you much more aware of posture.
Yes, as I'm sitting here slumping in my
Me
usual
too.
slump. Nancy, another question I have for you is, I believe you have a croquis of yourself, a line drawing of your figure.
No, I think Chris has done those, and every time I see hers, I'm really impressed by that, but I haven't taken the basic picture yet in order to create the croquis. So sometime this summer, I'm going to do that. I do
Good.
have a body form.
Okay, and so a double of you, you
Yeah.
were scanned, and so
Yes.
that's good. So with a dress form, especially if it's a body double, but even if it's a standardized dress form, but relatively close to you, a good exercise is to take fabric that you have in your collection. I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to give permission for everybody to go spend a few $100s on fabric, but if that's your take on it, by all means do.
By
But
all means. And
yeah,
most of us have that already.
that's
Yeah.
right. But dress your dress form. Obviously, you're not putting garments on. You can do that as well, garments out of your closet, but you can test out a kind of audition fabric. So if I'm going to make an empire top, I wrap the upper part of the dress form in one fabric. And if I want a contrasting fabric for the skirt or the top or the dress, hold up, pin on another fabric. You can do this on yourself, literally on yourself looking in the mirror. And I refer to that as mirror play, which I do a lot of. But I think the advantage of the dress form is that you can step away from it. You get a different view. And also, when I get combinations that I'm more interested in, I often will leave it there for a few days or even a week or more. So as I'm coming in and out of my sewing area, I see it. So I'm seeing it in different moods, when I'm fresh, when I'm tired, in different lights, under artificial light versus daylight. And I think those things can be really helpful, to help you cull out something that's like, okay, that isn't working. I did that recently trying to figure out how to embellish a neckline. And it took me about 4 or 5 days of having the dress on the dress form and pinning on different fabric for sleeve and then different trims and what did I want to do for that neckline. And I refer to that as living with it
Yeah.
so that I get
But I also still think taking a picture of it, because for some reason that I don't understand, the camera actually does see more than we do.
it does.
So looking at a picture of it sometimes is more informative than just looking at it on the dress form.
Yes,
And I don't understand that.
I'm glad you brought that up again. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Is when I think it's because the camera lens doesn't have, I was going to say a filter. Some camera lenses do have filters, but it doesn't have a mental filter.
Right.
It's just capturing. That's its job, and it does it really well. Whereas when we are looking at a dress form or ourselves in a combination of clothing that we're saying, does that make an ensemble out of, our eye is going to specific places that we are perhaps being more discerning, often in a negative way. I know when I look at myself in a mirror, my eye almost always goes to my tummy, and I think, oh my God, it just gets bigger and bigger. So it's hard
Yeah.
for
It isn't, Sarah. I've known you for a long time. It's not getting bigger.
well, the tape measure says it is a little bit. This is that, postmenopausal syndrome, but I think because even though I know that that's something I should be careful of, it's still hard to see the figure without that overlay of it.
Right.
There's something about having taken a picture of it. You get that depth of field change, which is helpful, but also the camera lens is not directing the eye to one specific place. It's just giving you the
Yeah.
entire image.
It's telling you what somebody else's eyeball has seen,
Yes.
which is good because then we can figure out where the emphasis is on a garment
Right.
or in a fabric or something like that.
And that's the value of the tool. It's giving us an idea of what other people are going to be seeing. So for people watching, a croquis is a line drawing of yourself that then you can put tracing paper, not carbon tracing dressmaking paper that you would use to transfer marks onto fabric, but literally semi-opaque paper, and then you can sketch different ideas of garments on, and often if you are trying to figure out what to wear with a certain style of pants, you'll have the pants on one piece of paper and then another piece of paper with a top, and you don't like that neckline, you take it off and you put another one on. There's a whole system that you can use to utilize the drawing on a croquis. And if you say to yourself, but I can't draw, it doesn't make any difference. I can convey my ideas, but I am not a natural artist. And that's not the point. The point is to understand the clothing. So it's a very useful tool. It's another way to audition ideas. And that's what we keep coming back to, Nancy, is the idea of we're in the clothing store trying things on, we're auditioning, we're in our own home going through our wardrobe, we're looking at fabrics. It's all about auditioning. Is that going to work or not?
I call it research.
Yep, it is. It is exactly what it is research.
And training your eye rather than your emotions. Because my emotions get carried away by the color. So if it's a piece of fabric that I like the color, I'm there. And then I have to kind of rein myself back and say, okay, is that really going to work for me or not? So
And when you say, is that really going to work for me? You have a feeling the color is going to work for you, but then the style of the garment, well, the type of garment, pants, skirt, dress, whatever, is one thing, but then the style of that garment is another layer of the complexity.
and also, is the color an accent color or is it the main color?
Yes.
So I'm decorating my house right now, which means the first thing that I'm doing is repainting everything. And so I grew up in houses that were uniformly white and like lots of little accent colors everywhere. And then I lived back east where they used a lot of color on walls. And so it was an abundance of color. And so I'm even in the house, I'm looking at what do you use as a main color and what do you use as an accent color and how much is too much accent versus not enough accent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the same thing is true in dressing. And it's the same, I think it's a similar process. You have to train yourself to look at it analytically to figure out what it is you're trying to do.
Yes, I agree with that. Period. Full stop. I also think that once we are able to look at things analytically, I think it's important to then let our emotions come into play. Well, do I
Yeah,
like it? Analytically, yes, it works. But do I like it? Is it going to work for me? Am I going to feel happy when I'm wearing this? Or am I going to feel like I'm trying too hard or
right.
whatever?
I totally agree. But for me, if I start with the analytics, I make fewer bad choices.
Yes.
If I start with the emotion and go back to the analytics, I give a lot away to goodwill.
I
So
think that's true for a large number of sewers, at least students that I have worked with.
yeah, so it's a
They get
challenge.
so wrapped up, carried away with the fabric itself. And yes, it may be a good concept, the fabric might do well in the concept of the garment, but then the missing link is that garment going to do well on you? Is it going to
Yeah,
flatter your figure? Is it going to present a pleasing visual proportion?
I have a couple of stashed pieces of fabric that fall into that conundrum. So very expensive fabric, so I don't know what to do with it, but
Yeah, and
someday
that's
I'll,
where to me the auditioning is really worthwhile, having it up and in a place where I can see it, throw different fabrics with it. And one thing I've learned, and it really came about almost accidentally when it first started to happen to me, is I will see a fabric, let's say it's a tweed, so sort of like a boucle tweed. They often have lots of different colors in them, or a print that has lots of different colors in it. And I really like the colors. I like the fabric, and I think, oh, I'll bring the pink. I'll pair this with pink because that should look really nice. And so that's a preconceived idea. And that pink, that notion of pink might work. There are a lot of different colors of pink, so you need to explore that. But also that even though the pink is going to work with it, maybe there is another color that is going to make that base fashion fabric, the boucle or print, just go boom, in a way that is totally unexpected.
right.
So
And I
I've
think that's
learned,
where your theory of auditioning really helps, because if you take that unusual choice and stick it up there right next to the boucle and let it live there for a while, that it actually may jump out at you and say, I really want to be here.
yeah, exactly. And to me, when I did this a lot with my custom clients, I would help build wardrobes for them. Say we did a jacket and it had a few different colors in it. It could be very subtle color changes or more bright ones. And I would say, well, you want a pair of pants? Let's do pants out of this. And then we want a blouse to pair with it. If in the custom client work I did, if we made a jacket, that's the biggest investment. So I would want them to be able to wear that jacket with more different clothing. So I might suggest a dress or a skirt or a different pair of pants, a different blouse underneath. And what I would do a lot is I might have the base fabric, so that tweed or the print, and then I would go to a fabric store. I happen to be fortunate. I live near an independent fabric store that's pretty darn good. Um, and I would swatch a huge number of fabrics. And when I say huge, between 25 and 50 fabrics. And because I buy fabric, it's called A Fabric Place here on Falls Road in Baltimore, because they know me. They didn't have any problem at all letting me swatch. And it's not like I'm taking big swatches. I'm just taking little swatches. And I would get it home and then do this audition process on the dress form. If you don't have a dress form, but you have a curtain hanging in your workroom, you can pin the base fabric up and then just pin the different swatches up against that to do your auditioning. It's not that you have to have a dress form. So I just want to
Right.
emphasize that. And I very often work from the process of elimination in the beginning. So I walking in and out of the room, I go, that gray is just not working. And I'd unpin it and set it aside. And the really obvious no's, once you get rid of them, you've narrowed the field a little bit, which is always helpful. And then I feel like that's when the harder work really starts
So
to,
do you start with the color, or do you start with the silhouette that you're trying to get to? So if for somebody trying to put together, okay, let's say I'm just thinking of saying, I want a dress that I can wear to the club for dinner. And, I want to be out there. I want to be out in the world. I want people to feel like they can talk to me. I want to look like I'm fun. I don't want to look old. So how would I start? So I come to you and I'm a client. What do you start with?
So
I
whether
mean,
you're a
you said that
custom
you would
client
like,
or a student, this is what I
yeah.
help students do as well. If you know, the first question I would ask is, do you have a pretty good idea of what type of garment do you want? Do you want a jacket out of
So,
it, or do you want a skirt out of your base fabric?
so that's a good question because you were talking about jackets and having a jacket that can be worn with a lot of things. And my thought was, oh, that's easy. I always make black jackets because they go with everything. And so it would be the underlying garment that I would try to figure out how that would go with everything. But I can see that you could do the reverse. You could start with a jacket that has a lot of interesting texture or colors or whatever, and then match that with a lot of undergarments, undergarments being loosely spoken. But then, of course, you take off the jacket, and then you've got the dress by itself. So,
Right. And does that
I
dress
mean,
then say enough?
yeah.
So you can go either direction. How do you decide which direction you're going to go in? I would start asking you a lot of questions. Do you feel like this, will the jacket take you through more than one season? I think in California, that's easier to say yes to than here on the East Coast. I very
Yep.
often have spring, summer, early fall, late spring, summer, early fall clothes. I have winter clothes that I never would bring out in the
Yeah.
summertime. So climate will influence that to some degree.
But you
But
get all those beautiful wools that you get to play with.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I would wrap the fabric around you, or ask you if you were a student that I was working with remotely online, wrap the fabric around you for a dress, take some pictures. Don't worry too much about style. The first job is, do we want this to be a dress or do we want this to be a jacket? And then put some different colors around you. Maybe it's a jacket that you already own, or you're going to put black over it, and then you might take that off and put navy, or you might put another print of you might mix things up with a plaid. So can you identify some other fabrics in your collection, preferably, but maybe you also order some swatches
Swatches.
of fabric that then you could make jackets to go with. And then if you're really struggling with that, it's like, boy, that dress, it just takes the stage. It's really hard to put anything over it. I would say, well, then maybe we want to go the other direction, and we're going to do the exercise in the other direction anyway. So if you put some fabric on your dress form as the dress, or it could be a blouse if you wanted it to go that direction, and then have uh, that base fabric that we're trying to figure out what it wants to be, wrap it around. Obviously, you can't make it a jacket, but you can have it on top of. And sometimes you go, oh, I have 4 or 5 things in my closet already, and I have 3 swatches of fabric that the jacket looks beautiful on. And then that would be your answer. So to me, that you could do it the other direction, where that base fabric or the dress, unless you feel like you're really having to force. If finding the different jackets or sweaters or wraps to go on top of that dress, you just keep hitting a dead end with it, or doesn't make you happy, or it's like, this is really hard, then I would say it probably doesn't want to be a dress. You want to go the other direction.
You have to let the fabric talk to you.
It's exactly right. And that is the phrase that I use, let the fabric talk.
Okay.
And if we teach ourselves to listen well enough, it will talk to us. The hard thing for me is when I approach that base fabric with something pretty specific in mind, and I've thought about it a bunch, and I think, yeah, it's almost like I'm bound and determined that that's what I'm going to do with it. And then I find that, yeah, it's really going to be hard to have it pair with anything else in that
I have
direction.
some of those. Yep.
And
Don't we all?
sometimes students will say to me, but if it looks okay, if the if you could find different things that go underneath it, this base fabric, how come it won't work the other way? It just sometimes it won't because of what the presence of the garment is.
So when I think about that, and I think about being purposeful and what I'm sewing and what I'm wearing, I realize there's probably a lot in my fabric stash that is not ever going to be made up into something for me. And then I'm sort of perplexed about where I go with that kind of knowledge. I mean, my personal style is a fairly slim silhouette, hopefully something fairly not young, but more fit and athletic, maybe. Although it's been a long time since I've done a marathon. So I'm trying to figure out how I bridge the knowledge between color and fabric to style, silhouette, and what I should be making and how I should be dressing.
I would encourage you and other people who find themselves in that situation is to start with a couple of garments and fabrics that you know are going to work. So you could probably identify in your collection of fabric 2 or 3 pieces of fabric that would make nice slacks or a skirt. And they really aren't going to be spectacular or a lot of fun as a blazer. They are not blouse weight. They need to be either a dress or a jacket or pants or a skirt, something like that. So then you can say, go through that process we just talked about. And okay, well, if there are slacks, then I have, oh my goodness, I have 5 different things, 5 different pieces of fabric that I could wear with those slacks. And you start there so that you can,
Okay.
so you make that identification. I think it's helpful to not make orphans. And I say
Yeah,
this from
I've made a lot of those.
a long line of orphans in my closet,
Yep.
where it's like, I really love this fabric. I'm going to make a blouse. It's going to make a beautiful blouse. And I make it and I think, oh, this is a beautiful blouse, but what am I going to wear it with? And I have nothing. And that's what I mean by an orphan. So I really try not to make orphans. So looking through your fabrics, if you find something, okay, that's a basic slack, it's going to be great. I've identified 2 or 3 fabrics pretty readily. It's fairly easy process for you to find some other fabrics or garments you already have made that go with it. Then you make that pair of pants so that you've got that, and you make 1 or 2 of the accompanying garments with it. And then you can start to say, okay, now I've made these 3 other blouses. This blouse would also look nice with this color slack. So then I'll make a second pair of slacks. Then you have 2 pairs of slacks that go with this same blouse, and they create a different mood. So one could be, I'm just going to say, a little bit more somber. The other could be a little bit more joyful, a little more party, whereas the other is, I'm going to a meeting at the club, something like that, so that you get the blouses can do double duty for you. And then you can just keep working at that. Then I would probably encourage you, you do like to wear jackets, and we're not necessarily talking, so the viewers know we're not talking a blazer anymore
Right.
necessarily. We're talking a little cardigan jacket or something, a princess jacket with some pretty neckline. And then
Right.
I would try, because you like having a jacket, a softly tailored jacket, something softer in your wardrobe, then I would do the work of finding a jacket fabric. And that might already be in your collection, or you might have to go outside and buy some fabric for that.
Gosh darn. So many places.
Keeping in mind, you want it to go, if say you have 3 blouses that go with your pants in some combination, not all 3 go with both pairs of pants, but you've got some combinations. You want to have your jacket work so that you don't then have an orphan jacket. It must work with at least one and preferably two of those combinations.
So it's interesting because what you're describing is a process that I've read about with people talking about the capsule wardrobe, where you build upon like two pairs of pants, two jackets, and a bunch of little tops and skirts to go with them. And I find that very useful as long as I'm keeping in mind what I'm going to be doing with that capsule wardrobe. And again, trying to figure out that 3 to 6 second rule when somebody says hello to you, am I trying to, I guess it goes back to what kind of pattern you use and what kind of silhouette you use with those fabrics. Because to me, the capsule wardrobe is I'm washing it out in the hotel sink because I'm going to wear it the next day. And that's not my lifestyle.
And
So I'm trying to figure out.
that's not what we're talking about here. That's not the kind of capsule wardrobe we're talking about. What I think of, what I'm describing is a wardrobe that's going to work pretty darn hard for you in your closet, in your home. Yes, you could travel with some of it if that's what you do, and you can always extrapolate this information to do a travel capsule wardrobe. But what you and I are talking about is just how are you going to get up every day and get dressed in something
Yeah.
that you feel good about yourself in and that makes you
Yeah.
happy. So it is a building process. And my rule of thumb is don't make a blouse or a shirt or a t-shirt like what I've got on that I don't have anything to wear with it already. I have a fair number of store-bought pants, jeans, and things like that that I like. I need to tackle pants again, refit myself for pants. So that's on my to-do list, just so you know, I do have a to-do list. But this top here has ended up being a real workhorse for me. I love the polka dots. I bought it online. It was just an impulse buy. It's a polyester, which I was not thrilled about, but it's a nice poly.
Right.
And on a day where it's cooler, or today the AC is running and the basement's really cold, which is where I am, it's nice to have on. But I can wear it with white pants. I can wear it with barely off-white pants. I can wear it with 2 or 3 color of blue jeans. So if I have were to make a navy or a pair of navy pants, I could do that, or perhaps a cobalt blue linen. So I have things in my wardrobe currently, but then there are other possibilities. So that allows me then to wear the same top with different styles of pants.
And see what I would go to. So I have my basic black pants that go everywhere. And so my go-to would be making a dozen new t-shirt tops to go with it. Not knit t-shirt tops, but knit tops of some sort to go with it. Rather than taking the plunge and actually making a nice pair of fitting pants for a new top. So I guess you have to figure out how many pieces you need of each thing, right?
Yeah,
So you shouldn't wear the same black pants every single time you go out.
I think you're right. You have to figure out what number of those different in each of those categories you need. And also, I would ask you, are those black pants, are they certainly are functional. They work
Right.
for you. How much fun are they? Or is the fun in that it allows you to get dressed? Or do you really need more than 1 or 2 pairs of black pants, in slightly different styles? Maybe how about introducing another color into your pants wardrobe?
Yeah, interesting. So I'll answer that question because it's a good question. Why do I like those black pants? They fit me perfectly.
Okay.
I still look well dressed. They're not too tight. They're tight enough that they show a little shape. And I can spill something on them. It's not gonna show. So you drop the shrimp in your lap, you don't have to climb more. And they're easy. And for me, introducing another pair of different color pants, then I have to say, okay, I have lots of shirts that go with black. What do I have that goes with navy blue? And then I start figuring out I don't.
Okay. So maybe navy blue is not the answer. Maybe you
Right.
need to find a different neutral color that works for you. And you probably need to, I feel like the pot calling the kettle black, you probably need to knuckle down and make that, you figure out the pant, how to recreate the pants so that you get the kind of fit that you want.
Right, right. And maybe then also experiment with some new designs of pants. But I like the looser ones, but I haven't figured out whether or not that's actually going to work on me. And that goes back to your idea of the croquis.
Croquis, and
Them on that.
also going to one or two or more stores and trying on a ton of pants and putting on different types of tops to see what works with them.
So being purposeful takes a lot of work.
It does take a lot of work. I think of it as a chase. It's a chase that I really enjoy. And when you get even just one combination of, pairing of garments that works together, there's a wonderful feeling like, yeah, I did it. And then you then can add another garment in that also works, and you start to feel the reward from the work. The other thing I was going to say about you talking about your black pants, maybe what you need to do is to find, I'm just going to say a print is an example, but a print that it's okay with the black pants, but it has the potential to have to be paired with other colors, and then see if that gives you helps you open the door to having a different color of pant.
Yeah, the impetus, right.
Yeah.
So what's your challenge in being purposeful? I've seen you over the years quite a lot, and you have a very simple silhouette. I always see you at work, so you have fabric and textiles that function for work. What is your next purposeful challenge?
Well, my challenge that I gave myself this summer was to make at least 4 dresses. I really like wearing dresses in the summer. And I've made one and have worn it several times. I have 2 that I probably need 3 hours of work on each to finish up. So I'm almost at getting 3 under my belt, and I have an idea for the 4th one.
So
right now, I have too many
different from your
ideas.
tunic? Are they different from your
No,
tunic shape?
no, it's one is an empire dress. So similar, you saw me in the winter time, I think, wear a fleece hoodie, fleece dress
Really
hoodie.
cute.
So I took that, but I've restyled it a little bit in the fleece. It's nice. I like the empire line for this new summer look. It's a little bit higher empire, and I've added a little bit more circumference in the skirt because I don't like fabric touching me a lot in Baltimore in the summer. So
It's humid.
it's a style that I don't have an existing dress off of that. This is the first time I'm making this pattern. And the other is an old Vogue pattern that is it has tucks here that then release, that I fit before COVID. And last summer came across the muslin in the pattern and tried the muslin because I was cleaning up, and I thought, oh, I can get rid of that. And I thought, might as well put the muslin on. I thought, oh, this has potential. So I am making that up. It's a woven fabric dress. And then I will either use one of those patterns to make my 4th dress, or it just depends on where I am. What calls to me. It may be that we're far enough into August by then that I'm thinking, oh, maybe I want something with longer sleeves or 3/4 sleeves at least, because we're heading up into fall pretty quickly then.
And so when you decided to make the dresses, how did you go through the process of deciding color and fabric? I mean, fabric in Baltimore, I can imagine would be an easy choice because you want something light and breathable.
And washable, especially living with grandchildren and a Newfoundland puppy who's very slobbery, has to be washable. So I am very, very fabric driven. And I sometimes have the style of garment, and I think, okay, now I have to find a fabric for that style. The tucked dress that I just described needs a woven cotton that is not stiff, but is not drapey either. So that sort of mid. And I happen to have something that a print that I liked, woven print fabric that I liked, that I was able to use for that. So that is a happy circumstance for me, because it's like, okay, that's the perfect fabric for it. I like the print. It'll be fun to figure out some sort of neckline embellishment, and done. The other dresses are a little bit more work for me. So I had bought, I went on a shopping spree in Chicago at a fabric store. I think it's on State Street, and the owner is Buddy. I don't know the name of his shop, but it's sort of a treasure hunt. It's fabric piled up. He has nice quality of stuff, but it's kind of a strange experience. And it's one of those stores that sometimes you start digging and you find a bunch of things. So I bought a number of things, and I thought, well, I can use this concept of an empire dress. And I looked through my collection of fabrics, and I didn't have exactly what I wanted for the combination. So I ordered a bunch of polka dot fabrics and striped fabrics, and just a yard or so of each, because for an empire top and a sleeve, it's not that much fabric. And I just laid them all out and started to play with them to see what combinations I liked. And the first one I liked, I pretty quickly figured out what I want is the print below, and then it's a polka dot on the top. And then the work began, because, okay, that's the easy part. I could figure that out. But which fabric becomes the sleeve? What do I do with the neckline? How do I tie? The bodice part is lighter color than the skirt part. How do I bring that darker color back into the neckline? And it's taken me, I probably would have finished this before, but it took me a good 3 weeks of living with that on a dress form, putting different fabrics on for the sleeve, or auditioning the 2 different fabrics for the sleeve, pinning on different things for the neckline. I'm ending up putting a little flounce in the lighter color at the bottom. And that it just was a process for me to live with it. I have learned for myself, I cannot push that process too hard. I can't say, okay, you've got to make a decision here right now so that you can finish this. It very often doesn't work for me. I have to live with it a little bit longer.
So I know you have, in our conversations previously, talked about your style, and your style always has the touch of the feminine, a little bit of a ruffle, a nice embellishment, something here, something there. How did you arrive to understanding that that was your style?
It's what made me happy. So and how did I come to that? There was a spell when I first started to do more teaching. So I'd been doing custom work. I could dress however I wanted to there. Then I started to do more teaching, especially at expos and conferences. And it was like, well, in my head, I thought I need to look professional. And so I was trying to wear much more streamlined looks. A little bit of an armor, so I'm the teacher here. And I felt like I was impersonating somebody. I didn't
Mm.
feel myself. I felt forced. Those are the words I used to myself. I felt like I was really forcing it. Didn't feel natural. And so I started to allow myself to try playing around with perhaps not necessarily different silhouettes as much as how do I embellish them, the garments. And I really, really grew to love and enjoy embellishments. And by embellishments, what I mean is I really like lace, so I might have a lace collar on something. And it might be that on the edge of a sleeve, I just have a little lace trim or a eyelet trim, or maybe just a corded trim. Those things take me a while to figure out. I just told you this example. It's been taking me almost 3 weeks to figure out exactly what I wanted to do with this, to finish this Empire dress up. But the satisfaction I get from doing it is huge. And I realized for me that it makes the garments a little bit more playful and it makes them more interesting to me. I think very often to other people as well. And so I just did a lot of experimenting, but then I realized looking back at some of my garments that I often would pull out to lecture with when I gave in-person trunk shows, that as I was talking about the garments, that how many of them had some touch of femininity to them. And I thought, oh, well, that must be that must be a key. So it's like looking in your own wardrobe. Well, what are some of the themes here? Maybe there's a theme. Oh, I have all different colors of blue. I've one student who lives up in Canada. The vast majority of what she wears is blue. It's great. And she'll show me a fabric. She'll go, oh, it's blue. I'll say, oh, what a surprise. And this last year, she's been working on a pink dress. It's like, oh my gosh. So looking at your own wardrobe, you can start to take the clues from that. So for me, partly, it's not that I feel like I have, it's not, obviously I'm stumbling here. I feel good about myself when there is a touch of femininity. So I've noticed that in the clothes that I wear that have a touch of femininity, or like this, I feel like the polka dot pattern is kind of playful. It's not all that feminine, but the neckline to me is a little feminine, but it's the playfulness, that combination of playfulness and femininity. And so I thought, okay, it works for me. Experiment with it, play with it. And sometimes I'll start to pull a lace out and I'll go, oh, find something else. You put lace on so many things, but it works for me. So why not do it? But then there's that balance, so that I don't want lace on every single one of my garments for sure. So I could have put a lace trim here, but I didn't feel like it needed it. The polka dots
Right.
enough. Now, if the polka dots were just kind of swimmy, and some people might view it and think, well, they just swim all over you, then either a blue or a white trim of some sort might help contain it. So does that help?
I really find the process of thinking about it to be very intriguing. It is a little overwhelming thinking about how much goes into a garment and trying to figure out what your style is and what you want the clothes to do. But I also think that as you get into the process, it probably makes life a lot easier too,
Yes.
because you know what you want and what works for you.
I think also, this is funny. I was just having a conversation with my daughter at lunchtime, that I'm very process oriented. I enjoy the process. And I don't know that I always did to the extent that I do now, but I have learned that that process, what it yields in the long run, is really worthwhile. So I don't shy away from the process, but I'm more ready to embrace the process. This dress that I've been stymied on for 3 weeks, just let it evolve here. It will come, it'll talk to me eventually. But the process is interesting. I do think in the beginning, it's important to go on and just get a couple of things made. But I also would say for you, if you're doing a blouse that you want to go with your black pants, and then you're thinking about a jacket, make sure that they aren't orphans, because that's part of the building blocks that you need. I think you can learn a lot about your style by trying garments on, as we've already discussed, store-bought garments on. I think,
Go shopping.
yeah, go
Shopping,
shopping.
not buying.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so it's a inexpensive afternoon or morning, because it's just getting over to the store, and it can be a lot of fun if you take a friend that you feel comfortable with. You'll probably laugh a lot. But I think it's for some people, it's easier to audition in real life that way, trying some things on, rather than auditioning on the figure with fabric in front of the mirror, or on a dress form. You just
And
have
then,
to,
of course, those are those days when you just need to sew something.
yes.
So you go make a t-shirt.
Yes, exactly. This is my go-to t-shirt. If I need to make, if I just feel, I just want to make something, I don't want to have to think. The pattern works for me every single time. I like the neckline, so just go make another one. And I think it's important to have that in your pattern library.
Yeah. So for me, I was thinking about this yesterday. I spent all day yesterday sewing, which was lovely. And you know me well enough after this last year and a half that it's a big step forward. But knowing that our talk is all about purposeful sewing, and was letting all that run through my brain while I was sewing. Yesterday was all about the purpose of having something to wear to a Western line dancing party. So yesterday was all about doing a denim skirt, which I will probably never wear again. But I have it for the party.
Oh, well,
But
good. Well,
so
and you might
purposeful sewing,
surprise yourself. You might
yeah,
end up wearing it.
maybe. But I've for those people out there who might actually watch this, purposeful sewing can be, I want something for one day. This is what I want.
Yes. So
So
I think that I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really true. And in our being purposeful with our sewing, I think I break it down into two categories. Is this just a one-off garment, like your denim swings line dancing skirt? Or is it that I'm in the mode that I'm trying to build a wardrobe?
right.
Or is it, my summer dresses? I I like to wear dresses to begin with, but dresses are nice because you don't have to think about what goes with them. They stand alone. And that is something that I would add in my process, like this Empire dress that's taking me so long. I want it to say enough to stand on its own. I don't want to have to think about, well, I have to pull a sweater on to make it make sense. I want it to stand alone.
Yeah, and I don't have many dresses that will stand alone. Most of my dresses need a topper.
And that could be just your dressing style. You're in California,
Yeah,
you need to be able to layer.
yeah,
And I'm a disaster when it comes to traveling to California. I always bring so many different clothes, because I'm not a natural layerer. It's layering garments is not my thing. And so it's like, okay, I have this little sweater jacket I can wear with this top, but then I need that one to go with this top. And if I move to
yeah.
California, I'd have to rework my wardrobe entirely.
So that's also an interesting one because your purposeful sewing changes with your environment.
Absolutely, it does.
And to be aware of that, I mean, I made the joke earlier that you get to play with wool. When I moved from London and then Connecticut back to California, my fabric stash was primarily wool, which somebody else benefited from. And I very well, I have that piece of cashmere that I fell in love with that I don't have any idea what I'm going to do with. But most of my wardrobe, the fabric out here is cotton.
Yeah. Yeah, and the environment does make a difference, and our seasons do. Somebody who lives in northern Maine or in southern in Florida, their wardrobe is going to look very different from somebody who lives in California, for instance. Our environment does make a difference as to how we're going to develop our wardrobe, both in style, but to some degree color. And I learned that many years ago. I was doing more sewing for my mother at the time, and she had come east and was with me for about a week, and we went to a fabric place and to buy fabric, and she fell in love with this rayon challis, and I thought, oh, I know exactly which pattern I'm going to make for you. And I started it before she left, and she thought, oh, this is just going to be great. And I finished it and mailed it to her. She said she never wore it because in California, in the color, the light in California is so different than the light here in the East Coast. She said it just felt entirely wrong. So she never wore it in California, but when she would go to visit her sister in Southwestern Virginia, she'd wear it there.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. I would never have thought that.
So I'm not saying that that's the rule. I think it was a somewhat unusual occurrence, but I do think we need to, it's beneficial to think about where we're going to be wearing the clothes. I know when I pack for California, I don't bring nearly as much black as I wear here.
Yeah, black is an accent.
It just feels too heavy, and yeah, the word for me in my mind is heavy. It just feels too heavy. Black is too heavy for California most of the time, but it's staple for me here.
Yeah. Well, it's a staple for me too. So, but it's all black cotton.
Yeah.
Or black lycra that can go to the golf club.
I feel like we've touched on so many interesting things, Nancy. I hope that you've gained something. I really enjoy talking to you.
I always do with you, Sarah.
And I always learn something from talking with Nancy. And if there are other of you watching this who you would like to have a conversation with me, please reach out to me, because that's kind of how this came up with Nancy. And I have tried throughout our conversation to make specific points about different things about that is in fact a tool to use. So you might want to listen to the recording a second time and pick up on some of those notes of what is useful. And Nancy, I can't wait to see what your next garments are, what your pairings of things are, and also to see how your style evolves.
So I confess that after years of talking about it, I think I'm going to sign up for your mentorship program so we can do that together.
Oh, that would be wonderful for me. What a treat.
It's about time.
So for those listening, I have a 4-month mentorship. Occasionally I'll do a 6-week mentorship if the project's really a small one, but it's if you're delving into a big project or what Nancy is thinking about delving into, it's a fun way to work with somebody. And I always learn a lot from my students, which is partly why I keep teaching, is because of you guys. So Nancy, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
appreciate your time and your thought, and very much appreciate your openness.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I hope it's helpful. Bye-bye.